Hello, it's Roger Duckworth, physiotherapist in Wokingham again. Today I'm going to talk about arthritis of the thumb. Arthritis in the thumb usually takes place here. There are various joints in the thumb. This one here, called the carpometacarpal joint, is a little bit like a horse's saddle, sitting on a horse's saddle, and it moves in lots of different planes, which is why we have such a huge amount of movement. It can become very arthritic if it's worn out or due to genetic predisposition, lots of reasons. Wanted to just say a few do's and don'ts and general outlines before we go through some exercises. All arthritis, or all osteoarthritis, tends to go through what we call periods of exacerbation and remission, which basically means it flares up and it quietens down, all of its own volition, frankly. So what we do with it slightly varies whether we are in an exacerbation or in a remission. Normally, when we are in a flare-up, then some of the exercises need to be more based around gentle movements, trying to quieten things down, pain relief, and are not about regaining any movement that may be lost. When we're in a period of remission, or it's quiet, then that's the time when we can start to maybe push the joint a little bit more and perhaps regain some movement that we might have lost during the last exacerbation. So as a rule of thumb, be a little bit more gentle with yourself when you're in exacerbation, and you can be a little bit more aggressive with it when you're in a flare-up. With regards to other things that you can do to help yourself, there's heat or ice. Now, typically if things are inflamed, they will respond better to ice. If you have an acute flare-up, then you might want to try an ice pack on there. Make sure it doesn't go directly onto the skin, so either a damp flannel or cloth, or at least some kind of oil, olive oil will do, or massage oil, just as a bit of a barrier, because you can burn yourself with ice. How long in an exacerbation? Probably about 10 minutes. There's no point in leaving it on much longer. You can reapply that almost hourly if you chose to, but I would suggest probably 2 or 3 times a day is the most you would really need to do during an exacerbation. During remission, I find that people generally respond better to heat. Now, often people find doing exercises in warm water, washing the pots, is usually quite comforting. But exercises in warm water, or a gentle microwavable wheat bag, or some form of a hot water bottle, again, not too hot, and be careful with burns. I'm not a big fan of the topical rubs of deep heat, because they tend not to really generate much thermal energy. They're more of a chemical reaction that doesn't have such a penetrating effect. Other things, it can be quite trial and error. Some people find that diet plays a big part in their arthritis, so it might be worth experimenting a little bit to see if cutting out particularly acidic fruits and foods helps you and diminishes down the number of exacerbations. For example, sometimes lemons are problematic, or are highly citric fruits, even oranges sometimes. Tomatoes can be a big trigger for some people, so maybe play around with those. Also, make sure that you're really well hydrated. Hydration is really important in all joint inflammatory disorders. So let's get on to some simple exercises and show you what to do. So firstly, let's look at the different planes of movement of the thumb. So this is a movement we call abduction, or looked at from this direction, away from the palm of the hand. It's worth practicing this, trying to be as straight line as you can. There's a movement we call extension. Okay. Opposition. This is really, really important. The opposable thumb is what gives us such high function in our hand as human beings. The fact that we can take it across to meet the other digits. So practicing opposition to either the creases here, the hardest of which is to get to the base of the little finger. If you can't get to there, just practice going to that one. It's a big circular movement, like that. Something that can be very comforting during the exacerbation is traction. So if you apply a slight pull through the thumb, doesn't need to be much. Try to relax the hand as much as you can, sometimes just holding it and trying to let this hand relax as much as possible can be very comforting. You can perform rhythmic traction movements. Like so. Again, about a minute, no more than a minute or so. That should be adequate. If we're in a remission stage and we're wanting to try to regain some movement, then we can start to be a little bit more assisting and forceful with the movements. So, hand position, if we come on to here rather than here, because we'll just tend to force this joint, which isn't what we want to get the movement. If we come to here and assist across, so we grip it between. Similarly, if we want to pull out, try to come, rather than from here, try to come as far up here as possible, separating this web space here. And similarly, with extension, we can come out. Again, try not to traction this joint by doing that. If we come onto here, then you'll get this movement focused here. Circumduction, circling around or circling in the opposite direction. Again, if we're trying to increase range of movement, then we can push that to its extremes. If we're just trying to get some ease, don't underestimate the power of doing a small circular movement. I liken it to trying to free a stuck door. We don't always push it to the end of range, sometimes we just wiggle it and it eases things up. Generally the body likes, joints like small sort of pain-free movements. If you think about being stationary on an aeroplane, the body doesn't like being stationary for long periods of time. It gets uncomfortable, so just little bits of movement can be very, very powerful. It's not always about stretching. If we come to strengthening the joint, then we can perform resistance exercises. So if we resist abduction, so either resisting like that, or a thing you can do is to put an elastic band around here and separate. Similarly, if we want to go into extension, then we can do the same thing there with our other fingers, or put the elastic band across and perform extension like so. We can do something sometimes where you're almost going the opposite way to opposition. Elastic band there, or fingers. Putty, plasticine, or something squishy in there for a power grip, or a pincer grip between here, the chuck type grip. Gripping in here into something squishy. You can get therapeutic putty off the internet. Contact me if you are interested. Or putty between here, or gripping between into opposition. So I hope this video has been of some help to you and given you a few tips and ideas of how to cope with the arthritis of the thumb. If you need any more ideas or any more hands-on physiotherapy, please don't hesitate to contact me at the practice. Thanks for listening.